Greece has a population of 10.4 million, a coastline of 16,000 kilometers, and islands that sit 4 kilometers from the Turkish shore. In 2025, it processed 55,380 first asylum applications, the highest asylum burden per capita in the EU, higher than Germany, higher than France, higher than any country that is not sitting on the frontier. And yet Greece did not choose to become Europe's waiting room. It was assigned the role by a deal signed in Brussels in March 2016 that traded Turkish cooperation for European money and left Greece holding the consequences. The Eastern Mediterranean route is still the most active irregular migration corridor into the EU in 2026. And now, a new route has opened longer, deadlier, and entirely outside the framework the 2016 deal was built for. The system built to manage one crisis is now facing 2. How did that happen? That answer starts in 2015. After the Syrian civil war escalated in 2014 and 2015, Greece faced a human flood. In September 2015 alone, 153,000 people crossed the Aegean. By year-end, an estimated 861,000, 70% from Syria alone. Greece at that moment was also in the middle of its own economic collapse, austerity, debt restructuring. The state was not in a position to build the infrastructure as the numbers required. They managed the flow, and for a while, it kept moving. Greece was a transit country. People arrived, registered, and moved north on the Balkan route toward Germany and Sweden. Then, in February 2016, the Balkan route closed. Country by country, borders shut. And in March 2016, the EU and Turkey signed a deal. Every irregular migrant arriving on the Greek islands would be held there processed under EU law, with Turkey classified as a safe third country. For the EU, the deal reduced numbers. For Greece, it changed everything. A transit country became a containment zone. The islands Lesbos, Chios, Samos, Leros, Kos became holding pens. For a while, the numbers dropped, but the system that replaced the flow was worse than the flow itself. The EU-Turkey statement required asylum seekers to remain on the islands for the duration of processing geographically restricted, unable to move to the mainland. Processing took months, then years. Moria on Lesbos, designed for 3,000, held over 20,000 at its peak, built next to the island's largest landfill. No adequate sanitation, no adequate medical care. The European Court of Auditors reviewed the hotspot system in 2019 and found it had not achieved its primary objectives. Relocation supposed to distribute asylum seekers across EU member states functioned only marginally. The burden stayed in Greece. But if the system was failing this visibly, why did no EU member state move to fix it? That answer is in the politics of burden sharing. And the politics are simpler and colder than any official document admits. Here is how the system works. A person arrives on Lesbos by boat, registered, fingerprinted, document issued, asylum applied for, and then they wait. Greece's asylum service processed 73,687 applications in 2024, a record since 2019. But the inflow consistently exceeded processing capacity. The backlog is permanent. Applicants must remain on their island of arrival. They cannot move to Athens. They cannot work in most cases. In March 2026, Greece's own Council of State annulled the government's designation of Turkey as a safe third country. The government reinstated it in April in defiance of the court. Compare this to Italy. Italy also runs hotspots, but Italy does not impose geographic restriction. After registration, migrants are distributed to reception centers across the national territory. Same EU framework, completely different outcome. And then there's 20,000, one number from one island, 1 year. We'll get to what it means. So far, this is a story about a containment system built for the Aegean. But while Greece was managing the islands, a second front opened, longer, deadlier, and completely outside the architecture of the 2016 deal. And that part is the part that changes the entire analysis. 20,000. That is the number of irregular arrivals on Crete in 2025 alone, a threefold increase, via a single route from eastern Libya across the Libyan Sea, a crossing of 350 kilometers. The nationalities tell the story of where the 2016 deal redirected the pressure. Egypt, 44.7%, Sudan, 28.3%, Bangladesh, 19%, not Syrians. People from conflict zones the EU-Turkey framework was never designed to address because Turkey is not on their route. The IOM recorded at least 2,185 deaths in the Mediterranean in 2025. Greece's response: asylum processing suspended for Libya route arrivals for 3 months. Mandatory imprisonment for rejected asylum seekers. Frontex deployed surveillance drones over Crete. To understand what that means, compare it to Germany in 2015. Germany received over 1 million arrivals. Same crisis. Germany distributed the weight across 83 million people in 16 federal states. Greece concentrated it on islands with combined populations under 200,000 and is now absorbing a second wave on an island with no hotspot infrastructure at all. The result? Greece has become a country people pass through or get stuck in, rarely one they build a life in. Today, Greece faces 3 problems that did not exist before 2016. The Eastern Mediterranean route remains the most active irregular migration corridor into the EU. 20,000 arrivals on Crete in 2025. Frontex expects numbers to increase in spring 2026. The crisis has relocated from Lesbos to Crete, from a route that was managed to one that was not anticipated. The asylum backlog is structural. 46.7 first applicants per 100,000 inhabitants in January 2026, still the highest in the EU. The geographic restriction continues to concentrate pressure on the original 5 islands, while Crete adds a new front line with no dedicated infrastructure. And the EU burden-sharing mechanism has never worked as designed. None of these are temporary. All of them are structural. Greece's problem is not migration. It is a system built in 2016 to contain one crisis that became the crisis. 5 islands, 16,000 kilometers of coastline, end quote. The highest asylum burden per capita in the European Union, a burden-sharing mechanism that never shared the burden. And now a second route from Libya to Crete that the 2016 architecture was never designed to handle. 5.3 per thousand inhabitants. That number started this, that number ends it. The EU-Turkey deal reduced the flow. It did not distribute the weight. Until burden sharing works in practice, the weight stays in Greece. The new EU Pact on Migration and Asylum, agreed in 2024, promises a mandatory solidarity mechanism. But the implementation deadline is 2026, and the mechanism allows financial contributions in place of physical relocation. Greece has heard the promise of solidarity before. In 2015, in 2016, in 2020, each time, the promise dissolved into process. Each time, the islands absorbed the cost. The question is no longer whether the system will reform. The question is whether Greece can wait that long.